Tonight, Supreme Court reform. Republicans push back.
This is legislation that would fundamentally change the way the court operates.
As Senate Democrats put forward a bill in response to alleged misconduct.
Ethical failures by the highest court in the land.
Plus, former President Trump and 5 GOP hopefuls have officially qualified for the debate stage. And
they do exist or they don't exist. And we're going to get to the bottom of it, dadgummit, whatever the truth may be.
The bipartisan effort to investigate UFO sightings.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
A congressional push to change the Supreme Court. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. The latest debate about stronger ethics in the nation's capital taking aim at Supreme Court justices.
By a vote of 11 to 10, Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee have sent the Skirt Act to the full Senate floor. The legislation would require the High Court to set up a code of conduct, tighten financial disclosures, and strengthen requirements for justices to recuse themselves from certain cases.
And CBN News Washington correspondent Hillary Powell monitored the committee's efforts. Hillary, why are we seeing this push?
Jenna, Committee Chair Senator Dick Durbin says he's done waiting for the Supreme Court to change its ethics standards in light of recent news reports outlining justices' potential conflicts of interest. Durbin calls reform a crucial step in restoring confidence in the court.
Free private plane travel, book royalties, cruises with wealthy political donors, all reported as perks for the nation's most powerful judges by the Associated Press and ProPublica. Those stories a major reason behind this effort, calling for more Supreme Court transparency.
This legislation will be a crucial first step in restoring confidence in the court after a steady stream of reports of justices' ethical failures has been released to the public. The public support for the Supreme Court is at an all-time low.
Senator Durbin and supporters say justices operate without an ethics code followed by virtually every other federal public servant.
They get to decide individually whether or not they will recuse themselves. We have a code of ethics in the Senate. This is our code of ethics, Senate Code of Ethics. Why shouldn't the Supreme Court?
Ranking Republican Senator Lindsey Graham used a visual aid to show why he charges Democrats with targeting the court's right-wing majority, quoting U.S. Representative Maxine Waters of California.
You ain't seen nothing yet. To hell with the Supreme Court. We will defy them.
Dozens of amendments were presented to the proposed bill, potentially reflecting the degree Republicans oppose the legislation's timing.
That this legislation is meant to be a court-killing machine.
Last week, AP reported Justice Sonia Sotomayor, aided by her staff, has used college visits to help sales of her books over the past decade. The outlet also outlining how various event organizers may have used visits by Justice Clarence Thomas and Elena Kagan for fundraising, forbidden in other branches of government. Some Democrats maintain the bill could establish a way to receive and investigate complaints of judicial misconduct and whether justices have benefited from cozy interactions with political donors.
That is the way the public is beginning to see the United States Supreme Court. Just like any other political body, politicians wearing robes.
If approved, the bill would give the court 180 days to adopt and publish a code of conduct and allow the public to submit ethics complaints for review. It's also expected to face a Republican filibuster in the full Senate.
All right, Hillary, thank you very much. And also on Capitol Hill, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. testifying in a hearing about government censorship. The Democratic presidential candidate was called as a witness by House Republicans to talk about the ways he says his speech has been shut down by the government, his party, and big tech. RFK Jr. is known for holding many unorthodox views and recently came under fire for comments widely seen as racist and anti-Semitic. Today, he blasted his fellow Democrats for pushing to cancel his testimony.
This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. Censorship is antithetical to our party. It was appalling to my father, to my uncle, to FDR, Harry Truman, to Thomas Jefferson, as the chairman referred to. It is the basis for democracy. It sets us apart from all of the previous forms of government. We need to be able to talk, and the First Amendment was not written for easy speech. It was written for the speech that nobody likes you for.
In those recent controversial comments, RFK Jr. said COVID-19 was ethnically targeted to attack Caucasians and Black people. He also suggested that Jewish and Chinese people were the most immune.
Well, Ari Cohn is the Free Speech Counsel at Tech Freedom. Ari, welcome. Let's just forgo the veracity of RFK Jr.'s opinions. The controversy, though, surrounding his testimony does in many ways make him a good example of the issue of government censorship. Ari, do you think there is ever a time when certain opinions should be censored by government entities?
I mean, listen, I've been doing First Amendment law for a decade now, and from my perspective, the government has no place determining what people can or cannot say or who people can listen to. That is the starting premise from which I operate. That being said, I think there's a little bit of confusion or maybe misuse of words. You know, I certainly don't think that members of a committee saying we shouldn't have this witness, he is not the type of witness we should be having. Calling that censorship, I think, does a disservice to real censorship. That is a House committee deliberating on who is appropriate to speak on what in front of them in official testimony. That in itself is not censorship. And if there's one rule that I have learned in doing this work, it is that when politicians start talking about free speech, it's best to take it with a grain of salt because they generally don't mean it out of principle. And we saw that nobody came out of this hearing looking good. Nobody. It was a dog and pony show. It was an airing of grievances. It was not a serious attempt to discuss issues in a sober, substantial fashion. And that's a shame.
For his critics of RFK Jr., they say that he spreads misinformation. He has some very maybe unpopular views about vaccines and that kind of thing. Does the First Amendment protect misinformation or what's viewed as being unpopular like that?
Yes, generally speaking, false speech is protected by the Constitution, and that's because the government is not the arbiter of truth, nor should it be the arbiter of truth. And so he's right when he says that the government should not be deciding what is truth and what is not and silencing what it thinks it is not. He's right on that general principle. And frankly, we all say things that are wrong from time to time about various subjects. I am certainly no stranger to being wrong. And the question just becomes, is the government doing this in a way that is inappropriate, or is this social media platforms deciding these are our policies and this is what we want to do? And that's the ultimate question: is has the government forced somebody's hand? And I think
Ari, we have to wrap there, but we appreciate you coming on this evening. Ari Cohn with Tech Freedom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of Democratic presidential candidates, President Biden took to the campaign trail today to defend his handling of an uncertain economy. The president traveling to Philadelphia to make the case that Bidenomics is working.
U.S. has the lowest inflation rate of any major economy in the world. The pay for low-wage workers has gone up at a faster pace than over 2 decades. We got more work to do. But people are coming off the sidelines to work. It's not an accident. It's my economic plan in action. It's Bidenomics.
Mr. Biden's remarks come amid a still strong job market and as new measures of inflation show record high prices have ticked down and appear ready to keep cooling, offering hope for an end to continued interest rate hikes by the Fed, which are designed to combat inflation.
Mark Hamrick is the Washington bureau chief and a senior economic analyst with Bankrate, and he joins us now for more. Mark, welcome. So the president's choice to campaign on Bidenomics was always a big gamble in an uncertain economy. You know, if we head into a recession, he will have to own that. Talk to us about the state of the economy, Mark, and whether you think the Bidenomics campaign gamble will pay off, or could we still see a recession?
Good to be with you, John and Jenna. Of course, we could still see a recession. These quarterly survey of economists that we just published at Bankrate about a week ago indicated that economists collectively believe the risk of a recession over the next 12 months is greater than 50-50 at about 6 in 10. But we also have to acknowledge that we've been saying this for about a year now, and so far the economy has resisted that tendency to say, be careful of what's just in front of us. I think we've talked in the past that there are going to be people on both the right and left who are not going to be dissuaded by the facts. And the reality is it's somewhere in between. And a lot that goes on with the economy has absolutely nothing to do with the president. Many of the bets that the administration and Democrats in the Congress have been making are going to be felt over the intermediate or longer term, such as with the infrastructure or the CHIPS Act. Those are things that will help to transform the economy with the help, of course, of the private sector. The private sector will be leading the way on that.
So, Mark, there is a Federal Reserve meeting scheduled for next Wednesday, and the Fed is already signaling potentially a modest rate hike. Are the hikes working to stem inflation, and will it be enough to get down to the 2% target?
That's the trillion-dollar question, John. And so far, I would say the rate hikes have been obviously having the effect of bringing inflation down. We had the consumer price index up at an annual rate of 3% as of the last read, and only up 0.1% in the producer price index over the past year. But there still are other things that are contributing to inflation that make Americans very uncomfortable and cause a struggle for them with their everyday finances, such as the high cost of food, the high cost of shelter. Electricity prices are still elevated, and we know that it's expensive to fly or to travel this year. Perhaps by this time next year, we'll be talking about inflation being in a better place. But I think the Fed's probably still good for at least 2 more quarter-point rate hikes. But Chairman Powell would tell us, if we could have him here on the show, that those decisions are yet to be made. But the next rate hike next week is very much a foregone conclusion at this point.
Yeah, Mark, on the job market, new unemployment claims went down by 9,000 last week. Why is it that even amid inflation and these continued interest rate hikes from the Fed, the job market has remained so steady?
Quite resilient and relatively robust. We're only a couple of tenths of 1% above the more than 50-year low for the unemployment rate, although we are seeing hiring moderate. But there's still strong demand on the part of consumers, even though retail sales are fading. A lot of what consumers have been purchasing of late has been more along the line of services. But we still have an outsized number of job openings, and I think that really is the key.
All right. Mark Hamrick with Bankrate, we thank you so much for your time and insights.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Welcome back. GOP frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, and 5 other hopefuls have officially qualified for their party's first primary debate, each clearing the 1% polling mark to make the stage in Milwaukee on August 23rd. Right now, according to Politico, that list is limited to former President Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and businessman and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. It's still not clear if Trump will attend the debate. All candidates must commit to supporting the GOP nominee, whoever that may be.
Well, let's bring in CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody to discuss more. David, we are about 6 weeks away from the first presidential debate. I know you're a good Christian, so you don't place bets or odds, but give us your sense. What are the chances of former President Trump showing up to that debate stage?
Well, thank you for prefacing that I'm a good Christian, John. Just in case anybody was wondering out there. Look, what do I think? I mean, now this, I can say this word, right? Can I say this word? It's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot. No one knows. It's Donald Trump. So, check back with me 48 hours beforehand. Now, having said that, my guess is, believe it or not, John, he won't show up. I mean, he has said that he's not going to show up. Typically, Trump does not go back on his word when it comes to bold predictions and promises like that. So I don't think he will. I think that's a separate conversation we can have it at another point, because I think it's a huge mistake if he doesn't. But I don't see him showing up. I think he's like, look, everybody else is chasing me. I got a solid double-digit lead. And so why do I even need to show up? I think it's the wrong move, but that's a separate discussion, John.
Yeah, even if he doesn't show up, he could still win the nomination, David. What does that tell you about the RNC and the GOP as a whole right now?
Well, it shows you that the RNC is a bit irrelevant. I mean, they're kind of, the key for them is to get out the vote, whoever the nominee is. As for the state of the Republican Party, I think it says everything you need to know, which is this is Donald Trump's party. It's still Donald Trump's party. And anybody that thinks that somehow, some way, someone else is going to make a move, they thought it was DeSantis. I mean, he's kind of petered out a little bit. We'll see. Maybe he comes back for sure. But at this point, even with the indictments, and it's not just one indictment, let's count them all. 1, 2, possibly 3, maybe 4. We could be into double digits soon. The point is, no, we're not going to be into double digits. The point is that it all makes them stronger. Why? Everybody says, how can it make them stronger? Because the Republican Party right now is an aggrieved party. They are a bunch of aggrieved voters that are frustrated and have lost faith in the public institutions of America, including the media and the federal government. So every time Donald Trump gets taken down a notch by the media and the public institutions in this country, FBI, CIA, DOJ, it actually helps Trump because that's where the Republican Party is now. That's what's happening.
Yeah,
guys.
they take it kind of personally, it sounds like.
Yep.
Well, from strong candidates to the lower polling ones with big names who may not actually make the debate stage this summer. One name that wasn't on the list that Jenna mentioned, marquee contenders like Mike Pence, he might not make the debate stage. Does that necessarily translate to the end of their 2024 campaigns?
Well, not the end, but maybe the beginning of the end. Look, if Mike Pence doesn't get on a debate stage, I mean, he can run for mayor of Iowa. That's what he talks about, going to all 99 counties and rah-rah, go to a pizza ranch and a machine shed out there. But it's like, so what if you're not on the debate stage? So I think that's the issue for Pence. Now, having said that, I did talk to Pence's campaign late this afternoon. They say he will make the debate stage. That's what his campaign is telling me. He said they'll make it. They're on their way to making it. I said, can you give me some numbers? Are you halfway there? Are you 3/4 of the way there? And what I mean by that is you need 40,000 unique donors. I said, how many donors do you have? You have at least 20,000? They wouldn't give me a number. They say, but they will make the debate stage in Milwaukee on that first debate. We'll see. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere.
See. All right, David, thank you so much. Have a great night, David.
You too.
Well, how should the U.S. handle growing threats from China? A bipartisan committee with 2 very different answers when we come back.
The Biden administration's policies on China took center stage today before the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, while a bipartisan effort led to this special committee, the 2 parties have very different takes on the administration's handling of growing threats from China. CBN White House correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us with more on this. Abigail?
Well, Jenna, Chairman Mike Gallagher opened today's hearing by pointing out to administration officials in attendance that while one committee goal is oversight, members also hope to provide help by working together to tackle China's threats on national security.
We are all on the same side. We are the good guys, and we must win this competition.
Representative Gallagher applauded the administration's initial stance toward China, while adding he feels something has shifted recently. The chairman then criticized them for not implementing their own policies.
In February, we watched the spy balloon lazily drift over some of our most sensitive military sites, while the administration seemed concerned about provoking China. And instead of holding the Chinese Communist Party accountable, the administration chased CCP diplomats around the world, seeking meetings in Beijing as if they, not the CCP, had something to apologize for.
Committee Democrats made a case that Biden's diplomacy with China is not a show of weakness.
My concern is that a lack of communication could mean that we're one incident away, one miscalculation away from a catastrophic outbreak of war. So is that a fair assessment of the need for diplomacy between the 2 leading superpowers in the world?
Absolutely. We believe that we're strong, we're confident, we're also responsible, and that's why we're pursuing those communications.
While Republicans argue it's time to take a stronger stance against the communist country.
The Chinese are the biggest bully on the planet. They determine the rules of the playground. They determine the relationships on the playground. And as long as you're going to play footsie around the edges, we're never going to be able to corral them.
The two sides agree on decreasing reliance on Chinese imports and fighting the growing threat of cyber hacking, with one congressman sharing a story of how a staff member was recently a victim.
Jack was proud to join this committee, so he went to update his LinkedIn profile, and this is what he found. This is not Jack. Now his name is Bai Lulu, and he is a proud graduate of Xi'an Jiaotong University.
On Thursday's 700 Club, CBN CEO Gordon Robertson made the case America's politicians need to come together and strategically think about our country's future.
While we're divided, China is quite strategic and quite focused and quite long-term in their thinking. We've got to start asking our elected officials, are you paying attention? Are you in the long-term interest of the United States? Or are you in a short-term political interest for your own seat?
The committee is also investigating how China could be working within U.S. higher education to gain economic and military advantages. It recently expressed grave concerns over a partnership between the University of California, Berkeley, and several Chinese groups conducting research on advanced semiconductors and imaging technology. There are also accusations that the school didn't report funding from the Chinese government for the research, a violation of the Higher Education Act. John, Jenna.
All right, CBN's Abigail Robertson. Thank you so much, Abby. A new eyewitness testimony announced for a bombshell UFO hearing next week. That's next on Faith Nation.
All right, finally tonight, calls for transparency on UFOs. Today, members of the House Oversight Committee unveiled the names of 3 whistleblowers with eyewitness testimony.
And during a hearing next week, we'll hear from them, Ryan Graves, David Fravor, and David Grush, all of whom claim encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP, are putting the public at risk. At a press conference today, lawmakers referenced a hearing last year which featured videos and images of UAP. They pointed out how that hearing was full of classified information and discussed what the public should expect at next week's testimony.
This hearing is going to be different. We're going to have witnesses who can speak frankly to the public about their experiences. And we're going to get to the bottom of it, dadgummit, whatever the truth may be.
The hearing aims to finally give the American public more details on matters of the unexplained. Dadgummit.
Dadgummit.
We'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, dadgummit.
Well, that's the end of our show.
Have a great night.